Hey guys, Ryan from the Mavericks, mavericks.goldwynandsons.com. This is episode 40. And in this episode, it's very special because I told you my goal was to get to episode 400. And now we are 1/10 of the way there. So in this episode, I wanted to dive a little bit more into the concept of bullets than cannonballs that I talked about yesterday. What does this mean? You have, when you start a business, enough gunpowder to do one thing right. Problem is, most people use all their gunpowder to do many things wrong, run out of gunpowder, and have to close their business. And like I mentioned, when you get to the valley of understanding, the landing of understanding, you realize that there is a massive gap between where you are and where you have to go, that the sacrifices necessary that are asked of you are more than you thought were necessary. And now you have to make a decision. Are you going to keep going or are you going to stay where you are? When you decide to keep going, you need to get cash flow positive. And so this means not experimenting with all the money that you have, but rather to experiment with a portion of the money you have to make sure that you are executing on actions that are going to make a return for you. So this is the idea of bullets than cannonballs. Again, you only have enough gunpowder to do one shot and to do one shot right. So this is what you want to do. You want to take your money and divide it into the portions that you are willing to lose and walk away from. And it is those dollar amounts that you are going to invest in little tests. You're going to check, is this business model going to make me more money? Is this advertisement going to make me more money? Is this cost-cutting method going to reduce my costs? Is this going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to work? And you're going to keep going little by little until you figure out what experiment is yielding the greatest net results for you. Right? And once you are able to empirically determine that a certain action is returning more revenue to you, you take the rest of your gunpowder and you invest it into it. And what will happen is your data will play out exactly as you expected. Easy peasy, right? Nothing more complicated than that. So the whole idea is you want to do bullets than cannonballs for everything that you're working on. In the book, I think it was Good to Great or Great by Choice by Jim Collins. There they talk about bullets and cannonballs, and one of the examples was Intel. When Intel was in the business, they were actually in RAM chips. And when RAM prices started to go down because Japan started to enter the market and produce RAM chips at a far lower price, Intel could not compete. But at the time, what they were doing was they were experimenting in processors. And so their experiments had revealed that there was a market gap that they could address in the processor business. And so they went into processors. Do you know what happened? When the RAM chip prices went down and they weren't able to compete, they switched their whole business model into processors because they had already tested that they could work in it. It already was returning a profit for them. And then they went all in, invested all their money. What is Intel known for today? Processors. There are many companies like this, like another example is Amex that they bring up in the books. Amex was into, actually you won't believe this, Amex stands for American Express, but it was actually the competitor to the USPS, the United States Postal Service. Amex was almost like the first FedEx. And what happened was when they started transferring these traveler checks across the world, they would take their postal service and they would, deposit these traveler checks in their offices that their visitors could go, like when they fly, they can go and pick up their traveler's check so they can use it in that country. Inadvertently, they started becoming a travel agency because the visitors that would reach the Amex travel office, or not the travel office, but the office where they would pick up their traveler's checks, they would ask them what's there to do in this area. And informally, the Amex staff started becoming better at conveying to the people what to do in the area. And this is when Amex started to slowly deviate into and by accident, the traveler business, right? The travel industry. And at the time, because they were also dealing with traveler's checks, they started getting into credit. Now what is Amex known for? Credit cards and travel. How do you put those two things together? How do credit cards and a travel business go together? RBC doesn't do that. TD doesn't do that. Visa doesn't do that. MasterCard doesn't do that. Well, RBC does that now with Avion, and TD does that now with Aeroplan. But at the time, These were completely separate ideas, to have a credit card and to have travel. Amex put it together. Why? Because they were accidentally running experiments that showed that there was an opportunity that they could capitalize on. And then they went all in. And when the time came for them where they could not compete with the USPS, I forgot the reason. I think it was because of the war. They switched their business model, and boom, they went into a new business model, and now they make a ton of money. Many businesses do this. This is real pivoting. People talk about pivoting all the time, like it's normal to just start a business, it's not working out, and then you pivot. That's not pivoting. I mean, that's what I did. We started the barbershop. Then when COVID happened, we had to pivot. And what do? We tried to become a retail shop where we were selling, protein powder and health food products, because it was COVID and we thought people were interested in their health. Problem was, we were a barbershop. Nobody was going to go to a barbershop to get protein powder. And so that business model failed and we lost a ton of money on inventory. But that's the key. The key is you don't just randomly pivot. You don't just throw money on the wall and expect something to stick. You don't just throw, and that's what we did. We put it into marketing. We put it into all these different ideas in the shop. None of it made money. The only thing that ever made money was when we doubled down on the barbershop, right? Because that's what we have, Golden & Sons Barbershop. Now we're running small experiments, right? We were doing this experiment with the Mavericks where we hosted a group of entrepreneurs and we started to notice that there was an interest in these entrepreneurs working together. Now we can find a way to capitalize on that, right? This is real pivoting. The pivoting is when you take your small experiments, either by accident or on purpose, with money that you can afford to lose, and test to see what works. And then when you know that it can work, you put all your money into it. And then all of a sudden, boom, it takes off. So that's the idea behind Bullets and Cannonballs. I highly recommend those books by Jim Collins. Good to Great, Built to Last, Great by Choice, Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, and How the Mighty Fall. Unbelievable. I think in terms of management, they're probably the best books to read. And I know I run a small business, so maybe I don't have that much of a say in this matter, but they are New York Times bestsellers, and other CEOs have found them valuable. So that says a lot as well. So anyway, Ryan from the Mavericks. If you want to join us, mavericks.goldwynandsons.com. I'll see you there. Take care.